Sham Sharadavam Nalalida Loka Pranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Pranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravinam Praptasya Gunanavasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravinam Vande Gurashi Charanaravinam Vande Gurashi Charanaravinam Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu ki Romancha Kampasu Taranga Bhajo Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringara Tanama Niramajanado Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyunjatopi Vande Gurashi Charanaravinam Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptan Kritvaiva Triptim Bhajata Sadeva Vande Gurashi Charanaravinam Shiradikama Vavayara Para Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Shiradikama Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Pratikshana Swa Dhanalopasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravinam Vande Gurashi Charanaravinam Ne Kunjayono Ratikari Siddhai Jajali Virjukti Apekshaneya Ne Kunjayono Ratikari Siddhai Jajali Tatrati Daksha Ativalavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Sakshadharitena Samastashrashre Ruktastathava Vyataiva Sadhuve. Kintu pravarja priyaiva tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvrinda. Priyaiva tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvrinda. Yasya prasada Bhagavat prasado. Yasya prasadam nagati kutapi. Yasya prasadam Bhagavat prasadam. Yasya prasadam nagati kutapi. Dhyayam stubham tasya yasatri sandhyam. Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Yasatri sandhyam. Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Dhyayam stubham tasya yasatri sandhyam. Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Yasatri sandhyam. Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Samene Namine. Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachata Deshatarine. Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachata Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Chaitanya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shivasari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Namah, Krishna Jadavaya Namah, Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah, Gopal Govindaram Shimadusudam, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Shri Radha Nila Madhava Radha, Nila Madhava Radhe. Jayo Jagana, Jayo Baladeva, Jayo Subhadrama, Jayo Sudarshan Chakra. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, Nitai Gaura Haribo. Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gaura Pramanande, Haribo. Jai Om Vishnu Par Paramansa Purvaja Gacharya Suttara Srishya March Divine Grace Abhachara Vina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Hari Ki Jai. ISKCON Pratishta Bhiviti Samstapa Kachar Vaishnav Siromani Parit Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patitu Dhara Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sadgoswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai. Nantakur Vishnu Vrendi Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrendi Ki Jai. Jai Param Dayal Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Jai Pramanama Sankirtanika Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinandana Shriman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaura Hari Mavrana Avatar Ki Jai, Golokira Pramadhani Nam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai, Yoga Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai, Brihat Midanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopukna Radha Kun Syama Kun Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrajabhim Vrindavan Mathur Dham Ki Jai, the Lordship Shri Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai, Shri Shri Mayapur Navadvip Ekachakradam Ki Jai, Paramakaruna Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai, Shri Purushottama Ketra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smaspadra Devi, Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai, Sri Ram Lakshman Bhakta Hanuman Ji Ki Jai, Bhakti Sarva Bhikna Vinashana Kanu Shingare Bhagavan Ki Jai, Jaganga Mai Jamana Mai Ki Jai, Tulasi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shri Mathura Dharani Ki Jai, Shamaveta Bhakta Vindi Ki Jai, Nitai Gaurari Pramanande Haribo. All glories to the assembly bodies, all glories to the assembly bodies, all glories to the assembly bodies, all glories, all glories, all glories. Shri Shri Guru Shri Gauranga. Namaste Narase Gaya Namaste Narase Gaya Pralada la da da Hiranyakasipu Bhaksha Silatangka Nakalaye Ito Nisinga Parato Nisingam Jato Jato Jamita Tani Singam Bahir Ni Singam Hrudaye Ni Singam Narasimhamadin Sharanam Prapade. Tavakara Kamalabhare Naka Adabhuta Singha Dalita Iranakasipo Tanabringa Kesavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Pavakara Kamalabhare Nakam Adabhuta Singha Dalita Iranyakasipo Tanabringa Kesavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Kesavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Kesavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Jaya Nishingade Jaya Nishingade Nishingade Jaya Nishingade Jaya Nishingade Jaya Nishingade Nishingade Jaya Nishingade Jaya Narahari Jaya Narahari Narahari Jaya Narahari Jaya Narahari Jaya Narahari Narahari Jaya Narahari Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Srila Prahlad Maharaj Jai Shri Shri Bhakti Pada Sarvighnashana Kanishingare Bhagavan Ki Jai Jai Bhakta Shrestha Prahlad Maharaj Ki Jai Nitai Gaurari Premanande Hari Hari Shri Vrindai Tulasi Rivai Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha Kesava Satya Vrindai Tulasi Rivai Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha Vrindaya Tulasi Devaya Priyaya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satabhaktai Namo Namaha. Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai.
Namo Nama Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Nama Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Nama
Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Nama Nama
Radha Krishna Seva Pabo Hey Abhilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Baba Hey Abhilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pabo Hey Abhilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Baba Hey Abhilasi
Jaitomaya Sharanaloy Tara Vancha Purna Hoy
Mara Sharanana Paravancha Purna
Kripa Kori Koro Tare Vrindavana Vasi
Kripa Kori Kara Tare Vrindavanavasi
Moya Vilas Vilas Kunjari Ava
Moraya Vilasa Kunjali Ova
Nayane Heri Vosara Jugada Ruparashi
Aminayane Vivasara Jogana Ruparasi
Eni Vedana Daro Sakiranugata Koro
Nivedanadara Sakira Yanogata Koro
Sevari Karadiye Koro Nijadasi
Sevayari Koro Diye Koro Nijarasi
Dina Krishna Dase Koi Hey Namora
Krishna Daseko Eyena Mora
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayana Bhasti
Radha Govinda Preme Sadayena Vasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayana Bhasti
Radha Govinda Preme Sadayena Vasi Jani kani sapapani Brahma hatari kani sa Tani tani pranasanti Pradachila pare pare Jani kani sapapani Brahma hatari kani sa Tani tani pranasanti Pradachila pare pare
Yani kani cha papani Brahma jati kani cha Tani tani pranashanti parakshina pare pare
Kani sapapani Brahma hatari kani sa Tani tani pranasanti Pradachila pare pare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda.
Nitagora Haribo, 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 Nitagora Haribo.
Haribo, 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 Nitagora Haribo. Shri Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Sattvatai Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Sattvatai Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Oh Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident over in Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me residence in pleasure groves of Shiva and Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower carry damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govind. Shri Mati Tulasi Maharani Vrindi Devi ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhyastakam ki jai. Chaito Darpanam Majanam Bhavamadavaninivapanam Shayakari Vachandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamita Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bhavdha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pitani Amitashmarane Nakala Itadrishitava Kripaya Mamati Durdhaiva Midrishamya Janina Nuraga Trinarapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Na dhanam na janam na sundarim kavitam va jagarishakamaye mama janmani janmanishwari bhavatar bhakti rahituki toyi oyi nandatanija kinkaram patitamam visame bhavam buddho kripayata vapad pankaja stitaduli sadrisham vichintaya nayanam galorashudharaya Varanam Gadagadardaya Gira Purakair Chitam Papukara Tavanama Grane Bhavisati Jugaitam Nemishena Chakusa Pravasaitam Sunya Itam Jagata Sarvam Govinda Virahiname Aslishvapa Daratam Pinastumam Adarshanar Marmahutam Karotuva Jata tathava vidadatu lampato matprananatastu saivana para Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sri Krishtakam ki jai Namo Mahavaranayu Krishna Prema Pradayati Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namini Gauri Trishina Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the horrible the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fiery condition of life with repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested your transcendent energies. It is not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy name, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause of devotion service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, some or other I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up I will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name. Oh Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so, even if it handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri 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 Krishna Kamkir. Namo Mahavarana Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. There are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devoted deity of your life or propagating the names of the Lord. 2. To consider the names of demigods of Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literatures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruitive activity, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names, and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls.
Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. Om Aganyati Mirandasya Yananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Pachakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagunara Gunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Parichana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pradan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Nivitam Sha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shivarsavanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahayam Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishoraya Shakshadvairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambude Pudambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitanandanamine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gauravir Bhava Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhoma Shri Jagannatayate Namaha Vanchakalpa Turabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Premupadayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gurachase Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhaktasaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surator Pangur Mamamanda Matirgati Matsarva Svapadambujo Radha Madana Mohano Divya Drindaranya Kalpadrumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prestali Bihi Sevyamano Smarami Shiman Rasarasarambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsan Venus Swanir Gopir Gopinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasti Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Panchatattva Mantra Ki Jai. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is always accompanied by his plenary expansion, Sri Nityananda Prabhu, by his incarnation, Sri Advaita Prabhu, by his internal potency, Sri Gadadhara Prabhu, and by his marginal potency, Srivas Prabhu. He is in the midst of them as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should know that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is always accompanied by these other tattvas. Therefore, our obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are complete when we say, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasati Gaura Bhaktavinda. As preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement, we first offer our obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by chanting this Panchatattva mantra, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasati Gaura Bhaktavinda. As preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement, we first offer our obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by chanting this Panchatattva mantra. Then we say, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. There are 10 offenses in the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, but these are not considered in the chanting of the Panchatattva mantra, namely, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasati Gaura Bhaktavinda. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is known as the Mahavadanya, the most magnanimous incarnation, for he does not consider the offenses of the fallen souls. Thus, to derive the full benefit from chanting the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, we must first take shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, learn the Panchatattva mantra, and then chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. That will be very effective. Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The transcendental vibration established by the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the sublime method of reviving our Krishna consciousness. As living spiritual souls, we are all originally Krishna conscious entities. But due to our association with matter from time immemorial, our consciousness is now polluted by the material atmosphere. The material atmosphere in which we are now living is called Maya, or illusion. Maya means that which is not. And what is this illusion? The illusion is that we are all trying to be lords of material nature, while actually we are under the grip of her stringent laws. When a servant artificially tries to imitate the all-powerful master, this is called illusion. In this polluted concept of life, we are all trying to exploit the resources of material nature, but actually we are being more and more entangled in her complexities. Therefore, although we are engaged in a hard struggle to conquer nature, we are ever more dependent on her. This illusory struggle against material nature can be stopped at once by revival of our Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is not an artificial imposition on the mind. This consciousness is the original energy of the living entity. When we hear the transcendental vibration, this consciousness is revived. And this process is recommended for this age by authorities. By practical experience also, one can perceive that by chanting this Mahamantra, or the great chanting for deliverance, deliverance from birth and death, of course, one can at once feel transcendental ecstasy coming through from the spiritual stratum. And when one is factually on the plane of spiritual understanding, surpassing the stages of senses, mind, and intelligence, one is situated on the transcendental plane. This chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is directly enacted from the spiritual platform, and thus this sound vibration surpasses all lower strata of consciousness, namely sensual, mental, and intellectual. There is no need, therefore, to understand the language of the mantra, nor is there any need for mental speculation or any intellectual adjustment for chanting this Mahamantra. It springs automatically from the spiritual platform, and as such, anyone can take part in the chanting without any previous qualification and dance in ecstasy. We have seen this practically. Even a child can take part in the chanting, or even a dog can take part in it. Of course, for one who is too entangled in material life, it takes a little more time to come to the standard point. But even such a materially engrossed man is raised to the spiritual platform very quickly. When the mantra is chanted by a pure devotee of the Lord in love, it has the greatest efficacy on the hearers, and as such, this chanting should be heard from the lips of a pure devotee of the Lord, so that immediate effects can be achieved. As far as possible, chanting from the lips of non-devotees should be avoided, just as milk touched by the lips of a serpent should be avoided because of its poisonous effects. The word Hara is a form of addressing the energy of the Lord, and the words Krishna and Rama are forms of addressing the Lord himself. Both Krishna and Rama mean the supreme pleasure, and Hara means the supreme pleasure energy of the Lord, or Srimati Radharani, changed to Hare in the vocative. The supreme pleasure energy of the Lord helps us reach the Lord. The material energy called Maya is also one of the multi-energies of the Lord, and we, the living entities, are also an energy, the marginal energy of the Lord. The living entities are described as superior to material energy. When this superior energy is in contact with the inferior energy, an incompatible situation arises, but when the superior marginal energy is in contact with the superior energy, called Hara, the living entity is established in its happy, normal condition. These three words, namely Hare, Krishna, and Rama, are the transcendental seeds of the Mahamantra. The chanting is a spiritual call for the Lord and his internal energy, Hara, to give protection to the conditioned soul. This chanting is exactly like the genuine cry of a child for its mother. Mother Hara helps the devotee achieve the grace of the Supreme Father, Hari, or Krishna. And the Lord reveals himself to the devotee who chants this mantra sincerely. No other means of spiritual realization, therefore, is as effective in this age as chanting the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Text number 30. Yavat Sakka Sakyur Iveshate Krita Praja Visage Vibhajami Bhokjanam Aviklavaste Parikarmani Stito Mame Samudnada Madhojamanina. Yavat, as it is, Saka, friend, Sakyu, unto the friend, Iva, like that, Isha, O Lord, Te, you, Krita, have accepted, Praja, the living entities, Visarge, in the matter of creation, Vibhajami, Vibhajami, as I shall do it differently. Woe, O my Lord, Janam, those who are born, Aviklava, without being perturbed, Te, your, Parikarmani, in the matter of service, Stita, thus situated, Ma, may it never be. May, unto me, Samunada, resulting arise, Mada, madness, Aja, O unborn one, Manina, thus being thought of. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. O my Lord, the unborn, you have shaken hands with me just as a friend does with a friend, as if equal in position. I shall be engaged in the creation of different types of living entities, and I shall be occupied in your service. I shall have no perturbation, but I pray that all this may not give rise to pride, as if I were the supreme. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Lord Brahma is definitely situated in the humor of friendship with the Lord. So humor does not mean in this context something that's amusing. It means a mood or state of mind. So humor also has many meanings. Lord Brahma is definitely situated in the humor of friendship with the Lord. So the state of mind is that he's a friend of the Lord, or Sakya. Every living entity is eternally related with the personality of Godhead in one of 5 different transcendental humors, namely Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. We have already discussed these 5 kinds of humors in relationship with the personality of Godhead. It is clearly exhibited herein that Lord Brahma is related to the personality of Godhead in the transcendental humor of friendship. A pure devotee may be related with the Lord in any of the transcendental humors, even in the humor of parenthood, but the devotee of the Lord is always a transcendental servitor. No one is equal to or greater than the Lord. That is the version of the Bhagavad Gita. Brahmaji, although eternally related with the Lord in the transcendental humor of friendship, and although entrusted with the most exalted post of creating different grades of living entities, is still conscious of his position, that he is neither the Supreme Lord nor supremely powerful. It is possible that some extremely powerful personality within or without the universe may sometimes show more power. Although eternally created in the most exalted post of creating different creeds. But Brahma is still conscious of his position, that he is neither the Supreme Lord nor supremely powerful. It is possible that some extremely powerful personality within or without the universe may sometimes show more power than the Lord himself. Still, the pure devotee knows that this power is a vibhuti, delegated by the Lord. So vibhuti means a power given by the Lord. And such a delegated, powerful living entity is never independent. Sri Hanumanji crossed the Indian Ocean by jumping over the sea, and Lord Sri Ramachandra engaged himself in marching over the bridge. But this does not mean that Hanumanji is more powerful than the Lord. Sometimes the Lord gives extraordinary powers to his devotee, but the devotee knows always that the power belongs to the personality of Godhead, and that the devotee is only an instrument. The pure devotee is never puffed up like the non-devotee class of men who falsely think that they are God. It is astonishing to see how a person who is being kicked by the laws of the Lord's illusory energy at every step can falsely think of becoming one with the Lord. Such thinking is the last snare of the illusory energy offered to the conditioned soul. The first illusion is that he wants to become Lord of the material world by accumulating wealth and power. But when he is frustrated in that attempt, he wants to be one with the Lord. So both becoming the most powerful man in the material world and desiring to become one with the Lord are different illusory snares. A snare is something that entangles or conditions or imprisons someone. And because the pure devotees of the Lord are surrendered souls, they are above the illusory snares of Maya. Because Lord Brahma is a pure devotee, even though the first dominating deity in the material world, and therefore able to do many wonderful things, he would never, like the non-devotee with a poor fund of knowledge, have the audacity. That means the nerve. Sometimes it means courage, but it means the false courage or the false concept to think of becoming one with the Lord. People with a poor fund of knowledge should take lessons from Brahma when they are puffed up with the false notion of becoming God. Factually, Lord Brahma does not create the living entities. In the beginning of the creation, he is empowered to give different bodily shapes to the living entities according to their work during the last millennium. Brahmaji's duty is just to wake the living entities from their slumber and to engage them in their proper duty. The different grades of living entities are not created by Brahmaji, by his capricious whims, but he is entrusted with the task of giving the living entities different grades of body so that they can work accordingly. And still, he is conscious that he is only instrumental, so that he may not think of himself as the supreme powerful Lord. Devotees of the Lord are engaged in a specific duty offered by the Lord, and such duties are successfully carried out without hindrance because they are ordained by the Lord. The credit of success goes not to the doer, but to the Lord. But persons with a poor fund of knowledge take the credit of success into their own accounts and give nothing to the credit of the Lord. That is the symptom of the non-devotee class of men. Wow, it's a very revealing purport. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Oh, my Lord, the unborn, you have shaken hands with me just as a friend does with a friend, as if equal in position. I shall be engaged in the creation of different types of living entities, and I shall be occupied in your service. I shall have no perturbation, but I pray that all this may not give rise to pride, as if I were the supreme. So this is very, very interesting, because we see Brahma himself says, at least according to this translation, that he says, I shall be engaged in the creation of different types of living entities. So is that a fact? Well, Prabhupada clarifies that. He says that factually, Lord Brahma does not create the living entities. In the beginning of the creation, he is empowered to give different bodily shapes to the living entities according to their work during the last millennium. Brahmaji's duty is just to wake the living entities from their slumber and to engage them in their proper duty. The different grades of living entities are not created by Brahma, by his capricious whims, but he is entrusted with the task of giving the living entities different grades of bodies so that they can work accordingly. And still he is conscious that he is only instrumental so that he may not think of himself as the supreme powerful God. So this is very important to understand. That is, that Brahma is just an instrument of the Lord's will. And he's only acting under the order of the Lord. So this is explained in 11th chapter, 43rd verse. We went over it yesterday, but we'll go over it again. And it says, Tasmat tvam utista yasho labasva jitva satrun Bunkshkva Rajyam Samridam Mayaivate Nihata Purvan Eva Nimittamatram Bhava Savyasachin. Savyasachin is Arjuna, who's the expert at shooting arrows. And but Nimitta Matram Bhava means to become, and Nimitta Matram is just the cause, or as an instrument. So here it says, therefore get up, prepare to fight and win glory, O Arjuna. Conquer your enemies and enjoy a flourishing kingdom. They are already put to death by my arrangement, and you, O Sabyasachi, can be but an instrument in the fight. So, the same way, Brahma is only an instrument in the process of the material creation, and he is entrusted uniquely with waking up the living entities from their deep slumber during the night of Brahma, or after the total absorption of the material nature into Mahavishnu and then expansion of it next time for creation. So he simply wakes the living entities from their slumber and engages them in their proper duty. The different grades of living entities are not created by Brahma, so that 8,400,000 different species are created by Krishna. So Krishna is the primary creator, and Brahma is a secondary, let's say, creator, but not really. He's just an instrument of the Lord to populate the world by putting the souls of different living entities in the appropriate bodies that are already created by the Lord. So the Lord creates earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. He creates, the living entity develops the false ego, but he creates the ego, the self, and then the living entity can either vacillate toward the real ego, which is Krishna consciousness, being the servant of the Lord, or develop a false ego by associating with the material nature in an improper way and becoming conditioned. Okay, so then the Lord creates all the living entities, bodies, 8,400,000 different species, and then he, after the creation, which happens very quickly, he maintains it, and then through Shiva he destroys it, and through Brahma he creates. He doesn't really need Brahma, but Brahma has certain functions to complete the material creation, and then Lord Vishnu maintains and Lord Shiva destroys. So, actually he burns it all up, and then it is inundated in water and eventually reabsorbed into the body of Mahavishnu at the end of material creation. So the different grades of living entities are not created by Brahmaji by his capricious whims, but he is entrusted with the task of giving the living entities different grades of body so that they can work accordingly. And still he is conscious that he is only instrumental, so that he may not think of himself as the supreme powerful Lord. Devotees of the Lord are engaged in a specific duty offered by the Lord, and such duties are successfully carried out without hindrance because they are ordained by the Lord. The credit of success goes not to the doer, but to the Lord. So this is spiritual life. Material life is people take the credit for doing things, but actually they can only do things by the mercy of Krishna. So because they're enlightened and they understand that, number one, Krishna is the supreme controller and creator of the material nature. Number two, Krishna is present everywhere in the material nature as Paramatma, and the whole material nature is supported by Krishna's Brahman effulgence. And number three, that the living entity is completely dependent on the Lord for everything. And therefore, he is not the ultimate doer. It's the Lord that is the doer. He is just an instrument. So to come to this realization is very difficult for most people because of the false ego. Now, I've written a booklet called Life's Problems and Solutions, and in there I explain, number one, how we fall into the state of self-imposed ignorance. We perceive the world with our five senses and deliver information to the mind, which is the sixth sense. The mind registers the input of the senses and records them in the memory, which is very similar to a computer. However, there is one major difference between a computer and a human being. A person can develop attachment to the objects of the senses, the input. This, in turn, can give rise to the development of lust, anger, greed, delusion, bewilderment of memory, loss of intelligence, and entanglement in the whirlpool of action and reaction. The results are many adverse consequences due to violating the laws of nature and the laws of society. One becomes hopelessly entangled in a complex net of attachments to temporary objects and relationships. These false attachments generate negative attitudes that keep one in an unending cycle of birth and death in the material world. The following is a detailed description of the downward spiral of self-imposed ignorance. So, self-imposed ignorance, how does that happen? Well, it happens by modern education, because people are taught wrong things, but they're taught in such a way that they believe that they are right and that the Shastras are wrong. So as soon as that happens, when people pay more attention to the false knowledge, they become conditioned by the laws of material nature, and they develop this lust, anger, greed, and so forth, delusion, bewilderment of memory, loss of intelligence, and entanglement in the whirlpool of action and reaction, or karma. So, then they develop what's called the false ego. Now, what is the false ego? Absorbing one's mind in external designations and developing false attachments, one encounters much frustration and struggle. There was once a woman who purchased a new Lexus. As she drove out of the dealership, a VW van painted with rainbow colors smashed into the new Lexus and caused considerable damage. By chance, the woman was not physically injured. She sprang out of the damaged car and began to scream in rage. "Why the hell did you run into my new car? I just pulled out of the Lexus dealership. Give me your insurance papers. Your insurance company will pay for all this damage to my car." And the person driving the rainbow-colored VW van said, "I'm sorry, lady, but I don't have insurance. I can't afford it," said the young man with the dreadlocks. The lady screamed, "Damn fool! You're a good-for-nothing dopehead." Although the lady was not physically injured herself, she seemed to be in an extreme state of pain and frustration. Why was the lady so distressed and pained? What part of her was affected by the accident that damaged her car? If a person has a toothache, they can point to the exact spot where it hurts. The swollen or sore gums, or the decayed tooth with an exposed nerve, is easy to identify. Where was the lady hurt? She was not physically injured, yet she seemed distressed and pained. This was due to her attachment and false identification with the new car. Her attachment was so strong that whatever happened to the car affected her. The idea, "This new Lexus is mine, I am going to enjoy driving it," was the immediate object of attachment of her false ego. The ego is self-identification of oneself, or I am. The false ego is identifying oneself with a temporary material object. One may think, I am the owner, controller, and the enjoyer of this particular material thing or person. The lady above assumed she was the owner and enjoyer of the new car. Because the object or the relationship is temporary, the conviction that one is the owner, controller, and enjoyer is illusory or false. At most, it is a short-term relationship that can change at any time. So, this explains how the false ego evolves. Why would a person identify with a temporary thing or relationship, knowing well that it can end at any time? A human being has a body with senses, which gather information and impressions of the physical world and feed them to the mind. The mind is the center of all activities of the senses. When one looks upon and hears about sense objects, the mind becomes a reservoir of ideas of sense gratification. Varieties of desires and attachment build up in the mind. The sensuous contemplation of an object leads to the development of attachment to enjoy the object. One thinks about the object by seeing its desirable qualities. One begins to feel how pleasing it would be to own and enjoy the object. One wills or becomes determined that unless they own and control the object, they will not achieve sensuous and mental fulfillment. From contemplation of an object, which includes thinking, feeling, and willing, one may develop attachment and eventually lust for the object. Thus the mind, or it could be object or a person, thus the mind and senses become repositories of lust, which is an obsessive desire to own and control something or someone. The intelligence or the power of the person to discern right from wrong, good from bad, positive from negative, becomes affected by the lusty mentality. One begins to make decisions based on lust for the object rather than what is the long-term good for the person. The lusty intelligence becomes the seat of the false ego, by which a person attempts to dominate material nature with its objects or people. Using the faculties of the senses, mind and intelligence, which are infected with lust, a person becomes attached to a temporary thing and develops a sort of addiction to enjoying the object with their material senses, and mistakes this temporary enjoyment as true happiness. The woman in the Lexus developed a strong attachment to enjoy her new car, but her pleasure was abruptly interrupted by the man in the rainbow VW. She vented her frustration and pain, which quickly turned to anger. It was as if she was injured by the damage done to her car. She was not injured physically. The truth is that her false ego was pained by the abrupt accident due to her excessive attachment to the Lexus. The false ego, or the material object-oriented consciousness, has two psychic divisions. One identifies oneself as the controller, and then as the enjoyer of the object. While enjoying the object, one develops a very strong and sometimes obsessive attachment to it. The passionate or overmastering craving to control and enjoy an object is a symptom of lust. Lust and its negative effects. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna explains the origin of lust in a human being. So we understand now what is the genesis of the false ego. We originally have the real ego. I am the eternal servant of Krishna. This I am is ego, and I am the eternal servant of Krishna is the real ego. But one can develop a false ego through false education, by false, let's say, acceptance of things due to association with family, friends, teachers, etc. And then as soon as the mind becomes infected with false ideas and false attachments, the false ego develops. So now, lust and its negative effects. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna explains the origin of lust in a human being. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath or anger, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world." Originally, everyone has pure love for God. When a living entity comes in contact with the material creation, the eternal love for God is transformed into lust in association with the mode of passion. The sense of love of Godhead becomes transformed into lust, just as dry ice or carbon dioxide transforms from a solid to a gas at normal temperatures and pressure. The carbon dioxide gas can be reconverted back to a solid by pressurizing it and lowering the temperature. Under such conditions, it changes to a liquid form. When the pressure is reduced, some liquid carbon dioxide vaporizes, and this causes a rapid lowering of temperature. The remaining liquid carbon dioxide becomes a solid. Similarly, love of God in contact with material nature is transformed into lust, but with proper treatment, the lust for material domination can transform back to God, to love God. When lust is unsatisfied, it turns to anger. Anger is transformed into illusion, and illusion continues the material entanglement. Lust induces the pure living entity to remain in the material world continually, suffering birth, death, old age, and disease. When a human being becomes bewildered by lust and anger, he may misuse his freedom of choice by refusing to serve God in this life. The attitude of service to God may be transformed to the desire to enjoy sense gratification. Then he comes under the influence of lust. Thus, lust evolves by contact with the mode of passion, which is born of unlimited desires and longings. By the increase of the mode of unlimited material desires and longings. By the increase of the mode of passion, one hankers for unlimited sense gratification. To achieve this, one must work very hard. By such difficult labor, one becomes attached to the fruits of labor and becomes bound by such activities. There is an instructive story to illustrate these points. There's a story about the great saint named Narada, who once asked Lord Krishna to reveal to him the workings of Maya, the Lord's illusory energy. Lord Krishna sat under the shade of a tree overlooking a river. He asked Narada to fetch water to drink from the nearby river. Narada went to the riverbank. He noticed a beautiful young woman who was also filling 3 jugs with water. They both acknowledged each other with a smile. Narada politely offered to help her carry the 3 full jugs of water. She lived in a village near the bank of the river. Narada accompanied her back to her family home, where he met her parents and siblings. The parents, who were farmers and owned land, invited Narada to eat dinner with them. The young maiden was named after the sacred river Yamuna. Narada was enticed by her charm and beauty. By associating with her, he became convinced that without her, he would never experience happiness or love. One thing led to another, and Narada asked the parents if he could marry Yamuna. They agreed. Soon the wedding was celebrated, and the couple was given land and a modest village house for residence. Narada worked hard to cultivate, plant, and harvest the fields. The cultivated fields yielded plentiful crops. Narada and Yamuna shared a part of their crops with Yamuna's parents and also with the poor. They became known for their generosity and kindness. They prospered. 2 more children were born to them. There was boundless joy in their house and the surrounding village. Narada was attached to his lovely children. They were always with him in the fields, in the barn, in the house. Narada would tell them stories, feed them, and in every way show his affection. His love for Yamuna was intense. The children and Yamuna reciprocated his affection, and their bonds of love grew day to day. The idyllic life continued for 8 years. During the rainy season of the 8th year, there was a deluge of rain that made the nearby river dangerously swollen. Narada and his family became worried about the rising waters. He joined the other villages in building levees to protect their homes and fields. Everyone prayed that the rain stop. The incessant rain washed away the levees and flooded the entire valley. All the villagers feared for their lives. They protected themselves by taking refuge on the roofs of their houses. One by one, the houses were swept away by the raging waters. Narada and Yamuna tried their best to protect their children. They were huddled together on the roof of their house, holding on to each other and praying. The water rose so high that the entire family was afloat. When Narada tried to grab hold of a floating tree trunk for safety, he let go of his wife and children for a moment. They were swept away by the current. He looked on helplessly as they disappeared one by one into the depths of water. He was heartbroken with grief. Narada held on to the tree trunk, which was carried by the current, to the edge of higher ground. He was able to grab some bushes growing on the edge of the raging waters and struggled to pull himself on the onto the dry land. He lay there exhausted and depressed, his eyes drenched in hot tears of lamentation. He was frustrated, angry, and finally bewildered by what he just experienced. He lost everyone that he cherished in a few moments. His ideal life was shattered by an unspeakable tragedy. He thought of jumping back into the waters and drowning because there was no reason to continue his life. From nowhere, he heard a calm, familiar voice of affection. "Narada, did you bring me water to drink?" It was Lord Krishna. Narada was shocked. He realized that he had been under the spell of Lord Krishna's illusory energy, Maya. He looked up and saw the smiling, beautiful face of the Lord. There was no flood, and the surroundings were lush, green, and peaceful. He experienced years of activity and relationships in a few intense moments, during which he was completely oblivious of his surroundings. He was immersed in a world of illusion that became his reality, which was like a dream that seemed real. So, this is a story from the Puranas. And so anyway, I won't read any more, but you get the idea. It's very easy to become bewildered by material nature. And that whole process is accelerated if we accept mundane knowledge that is full of discrepancies and is specifically meant to keep us prisoners in the material world. We should not even hear such nonsense knowledge because it's very dangerous and one can become bewildered by it and then could spend the rest of their life engaged in sense gratification. So, there is a process by which one can attain success in life and happiness, and there is a process by which one can not attain success and happiness, but become completely defeated and completely miserable and eventually die in frustration. So, I will explain that tomorrow because understanding the progressive and degressive process is very important. They are completely different. The progressive process leads to happiness and prosperity and success in going back to Godhead, and the degressive process leads to frustration, misery, and taking birth over and over again in the material world. So we will discuss that. That's part of this booklet called Life's Problems and Solutions, which you can see on the web page of the Vedic Cultural Center. Okay, so there are some more important points in this purport, where it says, it says that the first illusion is that the person wants to become lord of the material world by accumulating wealth and power. Now, that is the normal thing. That's what we're taught. That's part of the culture of America, of capitalism. Wealth and power. If you have a lot of money, that means you can spend it in ways to evolve your power in society. However, this is the first illusion when a person wants to become the lord of the material world by accumulating wealth and power. But when he is frustrated in that attempt, he wants to become one with the Lord. So the perfect example of this was the fake guru, Bhagavan, so-called Bhagavan Rajneesh. He became very, very prominent by teaching a false philosophy. He taught that you can become a sannyasi not by giving up anything, but by indulging intensely in all the different types of sense gratification. And eventually, by overindulgence in sense gratification, you will get tired of it, and then you will give it up and just become a sannyasi. So he practiced this in his ashram in Pune and in Oregon, where when people joined, they were given permission to smoke marijuana or take LSD or engage in illicit sexual activity. And there was no restraint, because he said at one point, by intensely engaging in these types of so-called sense gratificatory activity, you'll get tired of it, and then you'll become renounced. And he gave sannyas to men and women. And what developed was not renunciation, but AIDS developed in his community, because there was and then so much free sense gratification. And then that became a big problem. And then, so one thing led to another. At one point, he had over 100 Rolls Royces in his ashram in Oregon, in eastern Oregon, which is very close to here. And he was considered, he was a very wealthy man. He had a lot of money in bank accounts in Switzerland, and he had many, many disciples, hundreds and thousands, because he did everything opposite to Krishna consciousness. If in Krishna consciousness we follow the four regulative principles, he was teaching that you can engage in the four regulative principles and do it intensely in order to become a sannyasi. So he was not the only one teaching like this. There were other people. There was a German man who also was saying the same thing, that he had ashrams also, and in the ashrams, you had to join the ashram, you had to give everything you had to the leader, this German guy, and then you had free access to engaging as much sense gratification as you want. And if anyone refused to engage in sense gratification, they'd be thrown out of the community. So eventually, there was what happened was eventually the women took over the ashram, and he had many ashrams around the world. This is not Rajneeshnath, this is another person. His name is Reich, and he had his own philosophy of intense sense gratification that'll, like Rajneesh, that will lead to renunciation in the end. Well, it never happened. And with Rajneesh also, it never happened. There was just degradation. AIDS broke out in his community in Oregon, and then he got in a lot of trouble with the authorities. Eventually, the FBI seized all his assets because he wasn't paying any taxes, and he was flaunting his opulence and wealth, and he had to run away from the United States, otherwise they were going to put him in jail and prosecute him. So when he ran away, he went back to India, to Pune, and in Pune he declared that he was no longer so-called Bhagavan Rajneesh, but now he was Osho. Now Osho is a Japanese word. He became a Buddhist. Now, what's significant about this? Let's see what Prabhupada says. He says here, the first illusion is that he, meaning the person who wants to become lord of the material world by accumulating wealth and power, but when he is frustrated in that attempt, he wants to be one with the Lord. So both becoming the most powerful man in the material world and desiring to become one with the Lord are different illusory snares. So, okay, he claims that now he is Osho, and a Buddhist, well, the Buddhists, they want to make everything zero, and the Mayavadis, they want to make everything one. So both are nonsense. By making everything zero, one that's a radical solution to the problem of suffering. It's just like if you go to the dentist with your hand on your cheek and say, oh, I have a terrible toothache. Doctor, dentist, please make it so I'll never have a toothache again in my life. He says, really? He said, yes, I don't care what you do, just anything, but I don't want to ever have a toothache again. He said, okay. So he gets a circular saw and cuts his neck. He will never have another toothache. But is that a solution to his problem? No, it's not a solution to his problem. So that is Buddhism. The Buddhism is, listen, I never want to suffer again. Therefore, I want to become nothing. So that's their nirvana, to go into nothingness. So, and then the Mayavadis, they also, they're a little bit different. They want to enjoy transcendental ecstasy forever. But they refuse to accept that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that there is a spiritual world where there are Vaikuntha planets and Goloka and so forth. They say there's only the Brahman. And to emerge into the Brahman, they have to deny their own individuality and merge into this light. And therefore, and it does say in the Bhagavad Gita that Brahman is the position of eternal happiness. But their understanding of Brahman is incomplete. Now, we have explained previously what is the complete understanding of Brahman. Brahman is not only the Brahman, the Brahma Jyoti, it's the Brahma Jyoti, the Paramatma, and Krishna. That is the full conception of Brahman. So because the Mayavadis have an incomplete conception of Brahman, even though they merge into the spiritual light of the Brahma Jyoti, they fall down because the natural state of the living entity is to desire things and to be active in relationships. And they deny all those things. So they eventually fall down even from the state of eternity, or Sat, which is the Brahman effulgence, but it's incomplete understanding of Brahman. So here it says that, but when he is frustrated in that attempt to become God, he wants to be one with the Lord. So both becoming the most powerful man in the material world and desiring to become one with the Lord are different illusory snares, different types of illusions and entanglements in the material world. And because the pure devotees of the Lord are surrendered souls, they are above the illusory snares of Maya. Because Lord Brahma is a pure devotee, even though the first dominating deity in the material world, and therefore able to do many wonderful things, he would never, like the non-devotee with a poor fund of knowledge, have the audacity to think of becoming one with the Lord. So let's look this word audacity, Audicity. It's a very important word. It means having the nerve, to consider yourself God or some great personality. So it's a type of false courage. It's not real courage. It's a false type of courage, a false type of assumption. And it's actually an offense. So what does it say? Audicity. Yeah. Yeah, what does it mean? Audacity. What?
A willingness to take bold risks.
Keep going. Next.
Rude or disrespectful behavior.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Impudence. Impudence means you flout your so-called mistaken concepts of life and claim that you are something that you're not. Okay, so these are some more points in this verse and the purport that are very important. And we have examples like so-called Bhagavan Rajneesh. He failed in becoming the most powerful and most wealthy person in the world. And then now he said, well, I don't want any of that. I'm going to just, instead of becoming God, I will merge with God. So both are false concepts, both are nonsense, and both are material desires. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? Yes? Go ahead, come to the microphone. Come to the microphone.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So in the translation, it says that in Brahmaji, the last two lines, right? I shall have no perturbation, but I pray that all these may not.
I shall be occupied in your service.
Yeah, I shall
have no perturbation. Perturbation
No.
means problems or troubles or
Yeah,
disturbance of the mind.
yeah. I pray that all this may not give rise to pride.
Yes.
So as if I were the supreme. But yeah, so Brahmaji is doing this, but at the same time, he also got little bit proud, right? So in one
a
past
little
time,
bit what?
I mean, he got proud of himself or of
He wanted
something.
to test to see if that little boy was actually God.
Oh yeah. So yeah.
He wasn't. Let's say. Okay. Well, in that past time. Now listen. The position of Brahma is titular. That means that different people can hold that position. You understand?
Yeah.
So, the Brahma in this age appears also as Haridas Thakur. And he's a perfect example of a pure devotee, and he's the Nama Acharya in Lord Chaitanya's pastime. So, and he's purified completely by chanting the holy name. So the position of Brahma can be held by different living entities, right? So sometimes there's a Brahma who may have some false ideas, but he cannot maintain those false ideas. Krishna will purify him because Krishna is pleased by the service that Brahma is doing. In order to become a Brahma, you have to be the most pure person in the material universe, but you still have one desire, and that is to create the whole material world and to dominate it, to manage it, let's say. So because this particular Brahma that was being spoken about, he did that by dovetailing that desire into Krishna's service. But he did have a material desire from his previous life. But he was very exalted personality. He was like, let's say 99% pure. That 1% was he wanted to be a dominator of the whole universe. So Krishna gives him that position. But when he dovetails that desire into Krishna's service, he becomes completely purified and goes back to Godhead. Okay. So, therefore, his example is very important especially for materialistic people, to understand that they can attain real success. Real success is becoming a Brahma, and then dovetailing whatever residual desires you have into Krishna's service, and then going back to Godhead. Okay, so his example is very important. But he's a jiva like you and me, so he can make mistakes. So in one Brahma, because first of all, there are millions of universes, so there's millions and millions of Brahmas. And they're all different individuals, because Brahma is, the position of Brahma is taken by a jiva. Right? So there can be a Brahma who has strong material desires, and those histories are in the Vedas also. Just like one Brahma, he developed a desire to have sense gratification with his own daughter named Vak. And he had to give up his body. He could not have that body, and was given another body, right? Because that particular body and his consciousness were completely adulterated. So the position of Brahma is held by different people in different ages of time. It's not the same person in every age. Okay?
Yeah.
And because he's jiva, he can fall down. He can make mistakes. But because his service is so important, and Krishna will purify him, just like we are trying to get purified by the mercy of the Lord and through the instructions of Prabhupada. So we make many mistakes, but we can get purified if we do not give up devotional service. So Brahma did not, and this particular Brahma, he does not want to become contaminated by all the power he's going to have. And therefore he's praying to the Lord, please don't let me fall into that type of illusion. I have no perturbation, but I pray that all this may not give rise to pride as if I were the supreme. Okay? So that can happen to any of us.
Yeah.
Even the pauper is proud of his penny, as they say in English. So anything that leads to us becoming falsely proud will eventually be the seed of the false ego, and that will keep us locked up in the process of birth, death, old age, and disease. Haribol.
Yeah. So that thank you, Maharaj. So that was the question. So it can easily happen to each of us. Like
Anybody.
that. Right. The only solution of that is to keep
Always hear Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and never make any decisions without asking Guru, Shiksha and Diksha Gurus. Haribol.
Haribol.
Okay, any other questions? Is that the right time? I think that clock has stopped.
No, that stopped. Actually 7:20. 7:25.
Okay, so now we'll have
7:25.
Aarti. The snow has stopped the watch, the clock. Who is going to chant?
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Bando Mui Savadana Mate
Bando Mui Savadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Bhai Eva Vatoriya Jai
Janara Prasade Bhai He Bhavatoriya Jai
Krishna Prapti Ho Jaha Hoite
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitite Koriya Haikya
Guru Mukha Padma Janma Vakya Chitite Koriya
Arana kori ho mane asha.
Arana Koriya Maneya Sha
चक्षुदान लगे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान निधि प्रकाशित प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाशा जाते
Bhakti Jayate Avidya Vinasajade
विधि गाय जहाँ चरितो
Videga Janaracharito
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनर बंधु
Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu
लोकेनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना
Lokanath Lokera Jivana
आहा प्रभु गुरु दया देह मोरे पद छाया
Aha Prabhu Kora Doya Deha More Padachaya
ए बीजा से गुसुम त्रिभुवाना नमो विष्णु पदाय कृष्ण प्रसाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति नाथ स्वामी इति नामिने
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादिशधारिणे
Namaste Vani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasyadyadesatarine
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva.
Jayom Vishnupad Paramansa Pararajikachas Saraswati Shrimad His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anantakoti Vaishnavinda ki jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai, Prem Shri Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda ki jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana ki jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Shri Mayapura Dham ki jai, Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai, Tulasi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the simple devotees, all glories to the simple devotees, all glories to the simple devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavana ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pucharini Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya. This is the turn. Srila Prabhupada. The Lord